A millionaire marries a candy seller on a bet, but what he discovers on their wedding night leaves him shocked. Before the story begins, comment below and tell us which city you're watching from. Enjoy the story. Nicholas Miller never knew what it meant to lose. Since childhood, he had learned that everything had a price and that the world was like a giant chessboard where only the strongest made the rules. Money, power, and influence were his greatest weapons, and he used them without hesitation to get whatever he wanted. However, his personal life was nothing but superficial. Surrounded by people who flattered him, he had never experienced a real relationship. Beautiful, sophisticated women were always available to him, but in the end, they were all replaceable. Love, to him, was just a concept invented for the weak. That night, a luxurious party brought together the country's elite at the most exclusive club in the city. As always, Nicholas was the center of attention. Then, his longtime friend Victor approached him with a teasing smile. "With all that money, Nicholas, you really think you can have anything, don't you?" Nicholas chuckled, bored. "I don't think. I know. Everything and everyone has a price." Victor laughed, swirling his whiskey glass. "Then, prove it. I bet you $3 million that you can't marry a woman completely outside of your world and stay with her for 6 months." Nicholas let out a cynical laugh. "What kind of nonsense is this?" Victor leaned in. "I'm talking about the candy seller at the traffic light in front of your company. She has no money, no beauty, but I bet you won't be able to win her over, marry her, and make her fall in love with you." Nicholas laughed again, this time mockingly. "You've got to be joking. Me? A millionaire who can have any woman I want, marry a candy seller?" Victor shrugged. "What's the matter? Are you scared?" Nicholas narrowed his eyes. "Of course not." "Then prove it. Get that girl to marry you, make her like you, and after 6 months, leave her." Nicholas shook his head, unconvinced. "You've lost your mind, Victor. Or maybe you've lost your edge." Nicholas felt his blood boil. He never turned down a challenge, and Victor knew exactly how to push his buttons. He took a sip of whiskey and then extended his hand. "Deal." Victor grinned and shook his hand. "This is going to be fun." Nicholas agreed, without realizing Victor had a hidden agenda behind the bet. The next day, Nicholas ordered his driver to stop at the traffic light near his company. And that's when he saw Alice. She wore simple clothes, holding a basket of candy, walking between cars without hesitation. Even with indifferent stares around her, she kept a smile on her face. She never gave up. That intrigued him. Then Alice noticed someone watching her. She was used to curious looks, but this one felt different. She walked toward the car, hesitant. "Would you like to buy some candy?" The man smiled. "Actually, I'd like to talk to you." Alice narrowed her eyes. This had to be some kind of prank. "If you want to help, buy some candy. Otherwise, I need to keep working." The man kept smiling. "My name is Nicholas Miller. I have a proposal for you." Alice felt her heart race. Who was this man? Proposal? What kind of proposal? Nicholas leaned slightly forward. "I want you to marry me." Alice blinked, stunned. "What?" "That's right. I want to marry you." She laughed in disbelief. "You must be joking." "I'm serious." Alice took a step back. This had to be a scam. "Look, I don't do that kind of thing. I'm not asking for anything inappropriate, just a marriage." Alice crossed her arms. "That doesn't make any sense. Why me?" Nicholas observed her for a moment before answering. "Because I want someone like you." Alice felt a shiver down her spine. "What do you mean by someone like me?" "Someone simple. Someone not connected to my world." She let out a short laugh. "This is ridiculous. You have money. You could have any woman." Nicholas shrugged. "Exactly. That's why I want someone I can shape." Alice narrowed her eyes. "So, you want to buy a wife?" "You could see it that way. But think about it. Your sister needs help. How much longer do you think you can keep up this exhausting routine before your body gives out?" His words hit Alice like a punch. She worked day and night to pay for her sick sister's medical expenses and medications. Her sister depended entirely on her. She had always kept going, never questioning it. But what if, one day, she couldn't anymore? Nicholas noticed her hesitation. "You would have a home, security, stability, and treatment for your sister." Alice bit her lip. "What do you get out of this?" "A marriage on paper. That's all." Her stomach turned. "And what if I say no?" Nicholas smirked. "So your life stays the same, and your sister might have to pay the price for it." Alice's hands trembled. She was proud. But above pride, she had a strong sense of responsibility. Julia needed her. If marrying a stranger was the price to secure her sister's future, then maybe she had to pay it. She looked into Nicholas's eyes, searching for any trace of hidden malice. But all she saw was certainty. Taking a deep breath, she said, "All right, I accept." "Great," Nicholas said with a victorious smile. "I'll start the wedding preparations tomorrow." A few days later, the wedding happened so quickly that Alice barely had time to process what was happening. From the moment she agreed to the proposal until the instant she signed the papers, everything unfolded as though she were just a pawn in Nicholas Miller's game. He handled everything, paperwork, attire, and the ceremony, without giving her any say. There were no flowers, no emotional music, just a contract sealed with rings. The ceremony was held in an exclusive, luxurious yet impersonal venue. It felt more like a corporate event space than a wedding venue. Only a few people were there, some of Nicholas's friends and a handful of important investors, whose judgmental glances pierced Alice at every moment. She had never felt so out of place. Nicholas, on the other hand, seemed completely at ease. "It's almost over," he whispered to Alice when the officiant called them to sign the papers. She nodded, swallowing hard. Her heart raced as she signed her name. Her simple handwriting looked out of place next to Nicholas's immaculate signature, written with the precision of someone used to signing multi-million-dollar contracts. When the officiant declared them officially married, polite applause filled the room. Alice didn't smile. There was nothing to celebrate. After the ceremony, dinner was served at a long, imposing table surrounded by guests who barely acknowledged Alice. She tried to ignore the whispers. "Is this for real? He married her?" A blonde woman whispered to someone beside her. "Looks like a joke," a man in an expensive suit replied. "What does he see in her?" Alice pretended not to hear, but each word felt like a blow. She didn't belong there. Nicholas, meanwhile, showed no signs of discomfort. For him, everything was going exactly as planned. He moved among the guests with a confident smile, as if this wedding were just another successful business deal. Victor, the man who had suggested the bet, raised his glass for a toast to an unexpected marriage. His tone dripped with sarcasm. Nicholas simply smiled, raised his glass, and drank, unfazed by Victor's hidden intentions. He was in control. But Alice wasn't. Every glance and whispered comment made her skin burn with shame. She wanted to run, but where? There was nowhere to go. When the party ended, Nicholas took her to his mansion. It was massive, imposing, and cold. Just like him. Alice stepped inside, feeling small among the long hallways and gleaming marble floors. "This is your new home," Nicholas said casually, handing her a key. Alice took the key with trembling fingers. "And where will I sleep?" Nicholas smirked. "In the room next to mine. Don't worry, this is just a marriage on paper. I don't expect anything more than that." Alice nodded, relieved but still wary. As she was about to climb the stairs, Nicholas's voice stopped her. "I hope you understand your role here, Alice. You're my wife now. Your life has changed." Alice took a deep breath and turned around. "And what exactly do you expect from me?" Nicholas's gaze was cold. "Just know how to behave." She didn't reply. She just climbed the stairs, feeling an immense weight on her shoulders. This marriage was nothing more than an agreement. But somehow, it was already costing more than she had imagined. The door to Alice's room closed behind her, and silence filled the space. She looked around the luxurious room, feeling completely out of place. The room was larger than the entire house she had shared with Julia. The beige linen curtains were so delicate they seemed untouchable, and the bed was big enough for 3 people. But none of it felt welcoming. She was there because of a contract, because of a bet she hadn't even known about. Sitting on the edge of the bed, she took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. Outside, Nicholas was on the phone, likely dealing with some business matter. He didn't seem concerned about her presence in the house, which, in a way, was a relief. So far, he had treated her like an object, as if their marriage were just another investment on his list. But what bothered Alice the most was something else. She felt ashamed. Ashamed of the looks she got at dinner, ashamed of the whispers, and most of all, ashamed of having accepted that arrangement. But she had done it for Julia. And she would do it again, if needed. Suddenly, a sound interrupted her thoughts. Nicholas entered the room without even knocking. "I hope you've settled in," he said, his voice neutral. Alice looked up, crossing her arms. "Do you always enter rooms without knocking?" He raised an eyebrow, a slight cynical smile on his lips. "It's my house." Alice took a deep breath, holding back her irritation. "But this is my room." Nicholas tilted his head slightly, as if considering her response. "Fair enough." Silence stretched between them until Nicholas took a few steps toward her. "You don't seem very thrilled about marrying a millionaire," he said with a slightly teasing tone. Alice let out a dry laugh. "Should I be? Most women would be." She looked him in the eyes. "Most women have never been hungry." Nicholas frowned. "What do you mean by that?" "That not everything can be solved with money." "So far, it seems to have solved a lot." Alice let out a dry laugh. "You think you bought me?" "I bought a marriage, Alice, not you." She took a deep breath. "If you think you have me under control, you're wrong." Nicholas arched an eyebrow. "I knew you were stubborn. I just didn't realize how much." Alice looked away. "Life taught me to be this way." "How so?" Alice hesitated. She had never shared her story with anyone, but for some reason she felt it was time to tell Nicholas everything. She took a deep breath and looked up. "I sell candy at traffic lights all day." Nicholas nodded. "I know that." Alice licked her lips, her throat dry. "But that's not all." Nicholas observed her expression and noticed her hesitation. "Go on." Alice lowered her head, clasping her hands in her lap. "At night, I work in a bar." Nicholas frowned. "What kind of bar?" Alice closed her eyes for a moment before answering. "A men's entertainment bar." Nicholas's face changed instantly. His expression hardened. "You work in a men's bar?" Alice felt a knot in her stomach. "Yes." Nicholas took a step forward, incredulous. "What exactly do you do there?" She looked up, holding her breath for a second before saying, "I'm a waitress. I serve drinks to men who look at me like I'm an object." Nicholas stood still. Alice continued, her voice becoming shaky. "I've been pushed. I've had drinks thrown at me. I've heard disgusting things." She swallowed hard. "Sometimes I have to run to the bathroom and cry, but I always clean my face, go back to the floor, and keep smiling. I do all of this because I need the money." Nicholas felt a tightness in his chest. She looked at him, and Nicholas could see the weight of reality in her eyes. "My sister needs medication. She needs to eat. I do all of this for her." Nicholas felt something inside him break. Alice wasn't just a young woman with no resources. She was someone who fought every day to survive. The silence in the room became unbearable. Nicholas closed the distance between them and asked, "And what happened to your parents?" Alice closed her eyes for a moment, as if the memory was still too painful. "They're gone. My father was a construction worker. He died falling from a building under construction. And my mother got sick. We didn't have money for medicine. I watched her waste away, day by day. She died in my arms." Alice gripped her hands together, trying to hold back the pain. Nicholas looked away for a moment. He didn't know what to say. He had known many women in his life, women who had everything and still wanted more. But Alice, she had never had anything, and even so she was still standing. It was at that moment Nicholas felt something strange inside himself, genuine admiration. But then a bigger concern took over his mind. His name, his reputation, his legacy. Nicholas took a deep breath, trying to organize his thoughts. "Alice." She looked at him, waiting. He ran a hand over his face before speaking. "You can't work like that anymore." Alice frowned. "What?" Nicholas hardened his expression. "You're my wife now, and my wife can't live like that." Alice narrowed her eyes. "Are you worried about me or about your reputation?" Nicholas crossed his arms. "Both." Alice let out a bitter laugh. "Of course. I knew there was something behind this." Nicholas sighed, impatient. "It doesn't matter the reason. You're not working in that bar anymore." Alice stared at him. "You want to stop me from working?" He took a step toward her. "I want to stop you from being humiliated. You yourself said what happens there. I don't want my wife in that kind of environment." Alice felt her chest tighten. "And what about my sister? How will I support her?" Nicholas looked her straight in the eyes. "I'll provide everything you both need." Alice shook her head, trying to process his words. "I don't want your charity." He let out a frustrated sigh. "This isn't charity. You're part of my life now, Alice. Taking care of you and your sister was part of the deal. You don't have a choice." She looked away, feeling suffocated. Nicholas crossed his arms. Tomorrow, I want you to go and bring your sister here. She'll live with you." Alice's heart raced. "Are you serious?" "Yes." She remained silent for a moment, trying to make sense of it all. Sensing her hesitation, Nicholas spoke again, calmer this time. "You've spent your whole life doing everything on your own. I get that. But now, you don't have to." Alice felt a lump in her throat. She didn't want to trust him. But at that moment, Nicholas Miller was offering her something she had never had: security. And for the first time, Alice felt a glimmer of hope. Nicholas was restless. After his conversation with Alice the night before, he couldn't shake off the discomfort growing inside him. His entire life, he had believed that money was the solution to any problem, that it could shape people to fit his world. But Alice was different. She wasn't impressed by his wealth. She wouldn't submit to it. Nicholas had met women who pretended to be disinterested, playing hard to get just to stand out. But Alice wasn't playing. She genuinely didn't care about his status, possessions, or name. And that unsettled him more than he wanted to admit. Let's have a little fun. Type pizza in the comments if you've read this far. Only those who get here will understand. Now back to the story. Nicholas found himself staring at the breakfast spread on the mansion's dining table. He usually ate alone, but that morning, Alice was sitting across from him, having breakfast as if it were any other day. "Aren't you going to eat?" she asked without looking at him. Nicholas realized he hadn't touched his food. He picked up a cup of coffee just to appear busy. "I'm not hungry." Alice shrugged and kept eating. She wasn't trying to please him. And as absurd as it seemed, Nicholas felt a new emotion: frustration. He was used to being in control. But with Alice, he felt completely out of place. "Have you thought about what you're going to do now?" he asked, breaking the silence. Alice looked up at him, wary. "What do you mean?" "Now that you don't have to work like that anymore." She slowly set her utensils down. "You say that like it's some kind of liberation. Isn't it?" Alice took a deep breath. "Work was how I survived. It was hard, but at least it was my choice. Now I'm your wife because of a contract, and my life depends on you. I don't see that as freedom." Nicholas frowned. "You don't have to think of it that way." "But it's the truth." Silence filled the room, and Nicholas realized he had never seen things from that perspective before. To him, money was power, a solution to any problem. But to Alice, it was a prison, and that irritated him. "You can do anything now. You don't have to worry about money or your sister." "And that's supposed to make me happy?" Nicholas didn't know how to respond. Alice stood up from the table. "I need to pick up Julia." He nodded, watching her leave. Why did this bother him so much? Nicholas spent the rest of the day trying to focus on work. He reviewed contracts, analyzed investments, and discussed strategies with his lawyers. But nothing seemed important. His mind kept drifting back to Alice. He kept replaying their conversation from the night before, imagining her serving tables for repulsive men who treated her like trash. Thinking of her selling candies at traffic lights, ignored and humiliated. And it irritated him more than it should. The truth was simple. He had never cared about anyone but himself. He had always believed that the people around him existed to serve him, admire him, or be discarded when they were no longer useful. But Alice was different, and that unsettled him. "Mr. Miller?" Nicholas blinked, realizing his assistant was speaking to him. "What? You didn't hear a word I said, did you?" He frowned. "Repeat it." The assistant cleared his throat. "The European investor wants a meeting tomorrow. He asked for a response today." Nicholas ran a hand over his face, exhausted. "Tell him I confirm." The assistant nodded and left. Nicholas closed his eyes for a moment. He needed to pull himself together. Alice shouldn't be occupying this much space in his mind. But it was too late to avoid it. When he got home that evening, he found Alice in the guest room, organizing some clothes in a drawer. Beside her was a girl of about 8 years old, looking around in awe. "Julia?" Nicholas asked, and the girl turned to him hesitantly. "Hi," she answered softly. Nicholas had never been good with children, but this girl was the reason Alice had made so many sacrifices. He looked at Alice. "How is she?" "She still doesn't believe she can stay here." Julia lowered her head. "It feels strange. We've never had a place like this." Nicholas crouched down to her level. "Now you do." The girl stared at him for a moment before looking at Alice as if seeking permission. Alice smiled at her sister. "It's okay, Julia." Julia nodded but still seemed unsure. Nicholas realized that winning Alice over had already been difficult. Gaining her sister's trust would be even harder. But for the first time in his life, he actually wanted to try. Later that night, Nicholas climbed the stairs slowly. But as he passed by Alice's room, he noticed the door slightly open. He hesitated for a moment before stepping closer. Inside the room, Alice was on the balcony, gazing up at the starry sky. The soft glow of the moon illuminated her face, and for a moment, Nicholas just stood there, watching her in silence. "Are you feeling better now that your sister is here?" he asked, his voice softer than usual. Alice turned slowly. "Yes, thank you for that." Nicholas felt his heart race for no apparent reason. He wasn't used to feeling things like this. He took a few steps forward. "Alice, do you feel anything for me?" Alice frowned, surprised. "What?" Nicholas realized what he had just asked and ran a hand over his face, frustrated with himself. "Forget it. Pretend I didn't say anything." He turned to leave, but before he could take the first step, Alice spoke. "Sometimes you're cold and harsh, but other times you're kind. And it confuses me. I don't know exactly how I feel about you, Nicholas." Nicholas froze. He was silent for a few seconds, processing her words. Then, without thinking, he turned back and took another step forward. Alice held his gaze, and in a sudden impulse, Nicholas gently cupped her face and kissed her. Alice remained still for a second, surprised. But soon she felt her heartbeat quicken and responded to the kiss. It was intense. Different. There were no contracts, no obligations, just a real moment between them. The next morning, Alice woke up slowly, feeling the soft morning light coming through the window. The warmth beside her reminded her of the night before, and for a moment her heart raced. She turned slowly and saw Nicholas lying next to her, his eyes open, watching her. "Good morning," he said, his voice husky. Alice smiled shyly. "Good morning." Nicholas ran a hand over his face, as if he was still processing everything. Then he turned fully toward her. "I need to talk to you." Alice held her breath. "What is it?" Nicholas took her hand. "I don't want this to just be a contract." Alice frowned. "What do you mean?" He took a deep breath. "I want a real life with you. I'm falling for you, Alice." Alice felt a lump in her throat. "Nicholas, I know this might seem unexpected, but it's how I feel. I don't want our relationship to be just an agreement anymore. I want it to be real." She looked away for a moment, trying to process his words. I feel the same way about you." Nicholas stayed silent, waiting for her to continue. Alice took a deep breath. "But I need you to stop treating me with the coldness you did before." Nicholas gently held her face between his hands. "That's over. Everything will be different now." Alice smiled, and Nicholas kissed her again. The days that followed were unlike anything Nicholas had ever experienced. His relationship with Alice deepened in ways he had never imagined. There was no longer any distance between them. Alice, who had once kept a barrier between them, had started to trust him. Nicholas noticed it in the little things. She no longer pulled away when he got close, nor looked away when he complimented her. For the first time, she felt comfortable around him, and that meant more to him than he could admit. Nicholas wanted to make her happy in every possible way. He arranged special dinners, bought gifts for Julia, and made a point of being present. Each time Alice smiled, it felt like a small victory for him. But no matter how hard he tried, there was a weight he couldn't ignore. The bet. Alice didn't know the truth. She had no idea that everything had started as a cruel game. Nicholas tried to push the thought aside, but every time he looked at her, the guilt tightened in his chest. He wanted to tell her, he needed to tell her, but at the same time he was terrified of losing everything, and that fear consumed him more and more each day. Later, Nicholas was in his office when his phone vibrated. Victor. His jaw tightened. He hadn't spoken to Victor since the wedding, and he didn't miss it. Reluctantly, he answered. "What do you want?" "We need to talk." "Now." Nicholas exhaled sharply. "I don't have time for this." "You'll want to hear what I have to say." The call ended. That wasn't a good sign. Nicholas grabbed his car keys and drove to the bar where he usually met Victor. When he walked in, his friend was already sitting there, twirling a glass of whiskey between his fingers. "Thought you'd forgotten about me," Victor said without looking up. Nicholas sat down across from him, impatient. "Get to the point," Victor smiled. "How's your wife?" Nicholas crossed his arms. What do you want, Victor? Victor took a sip of whiskey before answering. Do you really think I made that bet for no reason? Nicholas frowned. What do you mean? Victor leaned forward. I knew who Alice was even before I challenged you. Nicholas's stomach turned. What? I used to go to the bar where she worked. Nicholas remained silent. Victor chuckled. Ah, now you're getting it, aren't you? Nicholas clenched his fists. What are you trying to say? Victor spun the glass between his fingers, but savoring the moment. I always wanted Alice. I kept trying to take her out, but she never gave me the time of day. Ignored me, treated me like I was nothing. Nicholas felt his blood boil. So you set all this up for revenge? Victor laughed again. Revenge? That's a strong word. I just wanted to see how far you'd go with the bet. But honestly, what I really wanted was to see Alice humiliated. Nicholas couldn't hold back. He stood up and grabbed Victor by the collar, pulling him close. Victor remained unfazed. You played the same game I did, Nicholas. The difference is, I knew what I was doing from the start. You, on the other hand, got lost along the way, didn't you? Nicholas shoved him back, disgusted. I trusted you. That was your mistake. Nicholas took a deep breath, trying to control his rage. He needed to fix this. Without saying another word, he turned and left the bar, leaving Victor behind. Nicholas drove home, an uneasy feeling growing inside him. Alice trusted him now. And even though it had all started as a dirty game, what he felt for her now was real. But what if, when she found out the truth, she never wanted to see him again? When he walked into the mansion, Alice was in the living room with Julia, helping her finish a puzzle. She smiled when she saw him. Hi, how was your day? Nicholas felt a tightness in his chest. She had no idea what was coming. Tiring, he said, trying to hide the storm in his mind. Alice looked at him closely. Are you okay? Nicholas opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. Julia called out excitedly before he could say anything. Nicholas, come look. We finished the puzzle. Alice smiled. Go see it. I'll wait. Nicholas hesitated. Can we talk later? Alice nodded. He walked over to Julia, trying to smile at the girl, but his thoughts were elsewhere. The truth couldn't wait much longer. But when Alice found out, would he still have a chance to fix the damage? Alice was starting to believe she could be happy with Nicholas. Over the past few days, he had been more than just a husband by contract. He was present, kind, making an effort to make her and Julia truly feel part of his life. She trusted him, but all of that was about to fall apart. Later, Alice sat in the garden, feeling the breeze on her face, when the housekeeper appeared at the door. Mrs. Miller, there's a man here who wants to speak with you. Alice frowned. Who is it? Before the housekeeper could answer, a voice dripping with sarcasm echoed across the garden. Alice, what a pleasure to see you. She turned and felt a chill of discomfort. Victor. He was leaning against the doorframe, the same smug smile that always irritated her. What do you want? She asked, her voice automatically turning cold. Victor took a few slow steps toward her. I thought we should talk. Alice crossed her arms. We have nothing to talk about. Oh, but we do. Alice narrowed her eyes. Be direct. Victor let out a low laugh. You really think this marriage is real, don't you? Alice's stomach turned. What do you mean by that? Victor gave a cruel smile. Nicholas never wanted to marry you. It was all a game, a bet. Alice's blood ran cold. What? Victor savored the moment, watching the impact of his words. That's how it all started, a bet between friends. I dared Nicholas to marry you, to see if he could mold you to his world, just for my amusement. Alice felt her head spin. You're lying. Victor raised his hands, feigning innocence. Oh, my dear, I wish I were. But ask him. Ask how it all began. Ask why he chose you. Alice took a step back, her heart racing. You're lying, she repeated, but her voice came out weak. Victor laughed. If you want to fool yourself, go ahead. I'm only telling you this because I thought you should know who you're sleeping next to. Alice felt her legs weaken. She spun on her heels and ran inside the house, struggling to breathe. She needed to hear it from Nicholas himself. She needed to see him deny it. She needed to believe this was all a lie. Nicholas was in his office, reviewing some documents when the door suddenly burst open. Alice stormed in like a hurricane, her eyes red, her chest heaving. Nicholas stood up immediately, alarmed. Alice? What's wrong? She was trembling, her eyes burned with tears. Tell me it's not true. Nicholas frowned. What? Alice swallowed hard, her voice shaky. The bet? Silence filled the room, and in that moment, Alice knew. The absence of an answer was all she needed to hear. The ground seemed to vanish beneath her feet. Alice, Nicholas tried to step closer. She immediately stepped back. Don't touch me. I can explain. Explain what? Alice shouted, her voice filled with pain. That I was just a game to you? That every word, every gesture, every touch was all a lie? Nicholas ran his hands through his hair, desperate. At first, yes. But then, Alice, everything changed. I changed. Alice let out a bitter laugh, full of pain. You made me believe I could trust you, that I could love you. She looked deep into his eyes, and Nicholas felt his chest tighten. I fell in love with you, Nicholas, and now I find out I was just entertainment for you. Nicholas felt his heart shatter. You were never just entertainment to me. Alice didn't want to hear it. She turned and ran out of the office. Alice! Nicholas shouted after her, but she didn't look back. Alice's pain was unbearable. She ran aimlessly, not knowing where to go. Tears streamed down her face. Her chest burned. Her mind screamed. She needed to get away from there. Nicholas ran after her. Alice, please, stop. She rushed through the gate, unaware of her surroundings. She didn't see the car speeding toward her. The sound of the horn tore through the air. The headlights blinded her. A scream caught in her throat. And then, a strong pull yanked her back from the street. Her body hit the ground, wrapped in Nicholas's arms. Her heart pounded against her ribs, her breathing erratic from the panic. Nicholas held her tightly, his expression wild with fear. Are you crazy? You almost died. Alice blinked a few times, trying to process what had just happened. The car sped away, and all she could hear was the sound of her own ragged breathing. Nicholas cupped her face with both hands. Alice? Look at me. She tried to pull away, but her legs were too weak. Let me go. No. Alice pushed against him, but he didn't budge. Why? Her voice came out barely above a whisper, trembling. Nicholas took a deep breath. Because I love you. Alice's eyes widened, and then her body couldn't take it anymore. Her vision darkened. Her legs gave out. Nicholas caught her just before she collapsed to the ground. Alice! His chest rose and fell rapidly, his voice filled with panic. He scooped her up in his arms, rushing toward the car. Stay with me, love, please. His heart pounded wildly in his chest. He couldn't lose her. Not now. Not after everything. Time felt frozen. Nicholas drove as fast as he could, gripping the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned white. His heart pounded, his breathing uneven. Alice had passed out in his arms just minutes ago. He kept glancing at the rearview mirror every second, checking to see if she moved, if she made any sound. But she didn't. Her face was pale, her lips slightly parted, and she looked so fragile that his fear grew stronger with every mile. Hold on, Alice, he murmured, feeling the fear claw at his chest like a suffocating shadow. If anything happened to her, he would never forgive himself. Never. Nicholas rushed into the hospital, carrying Alice in his arms, ignoring the shocked looks from the nurses. I need help. His voice came out more desperate than he intended. A medical team quickly approached, placing Alice onto a stretcher. What happened? One of the doctors asked. She passed out. She was emotionally distressed and almost got hit by a car. The doctor nodded, pushing the stretcher down the hallway. Nicholas tried to follow, but a nurse stopped him. Sir, you need to wait here. He stood there, his chest rising and falling heavily. Every second of waiting felt like torture. He ran his hands over his face, trying to organize his thoughts, but all he could see in his mind was Alice running, the car headlights illuminating her face, and the panic in her eyes before she fainted. This was all his fault. He sank into one of the waiting room chairs, feeling helpless. For the first time in his life, he was afraid of losing something that truly mattered. The minutes felt like hours, but finally, the doctor returned. Nicholas stood up so quickly that he almost lost his balance. How is she? The doctor gave a small smile. Alice is fine. She just had a strong emotional shock. She needs rest. Nicholas exhaled, relief washing over him. But then the doctor continued. There's something else you should know. Nicholas frowned. What is it? The doctor looked at the chart and then back at him. Your wife is pregnant. Nicholas felt the world stop. What? Alice is expecting a baby. He blinked several times as if he had misheard. She's pregnant? Yes. Nicholas ran a hand through his hair, his heart racing. Alice was expecting his child. The weight of the news was overwhelming. A whirlwind of emotions hit him all at once: fear, uncertainty, and above all, overwhelming joy. He was going to be a father. But before he could get lost in the flood of emotions, a brutal truth struck him. Alice hated him now. She would never want to stay with him after everything. She would never forgive him. "Can I see her?" he asked, his voice softer now. The doctor nodded. "Yes, but she's still very shaken." Nicholas nodded and followed the doctor to the room. Alice was lying in the hospital bed, her eyes fixed on the ceiling. When Nicholas walked in, she turned away, her expression cold. He approached slowly. "Alice?" She didn't respond. Nicholas pulled a chair up beside the bed and sat down. "You already know, don't you?" Alice turned to face him. "That I'm pregnant? Yes." Her voice was cold and cutting. Nicholas felt a tightness in his chest. "I didn't know, Alice, but now that I do." She laughed bitterly. "Now that you know what? You're going to step into the role of perfect husband? Model father?" Nicholas took a deep breath. "I want to make things right. I want to be with you." Alice shook her head, her eyes full of pain. "No. You just want to ease your guilt." "That's not true." "Of course it is." She raised her voice. "You don't want to lose the game, Nicholas. You never did." Nicholas felt as though he'd been punched. "You really think this is still a game for me?" Alice's eyes were sharp. "I don't know what to believe anymore." He closed his eyes for a moment before saying, "I love you." Alice clenched her jaw. "No." Nicholas felt a lump in his throat. "What?" Alice's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "You don't love me, Nicholas. You don't even know what love is." The words hit him like a blow. "Alice, I'm going to raise this baby on my own." Nicholas's eyes widened. "What?" "I don't want my child growing up around someone as ruthless and ambitious as you." Nicholas felt his heart shatter. "You can't keep me away from our child." "I can." He ran his hands over his face, desperate. "Alice, please. I want to change." She took a deep breath. "Then change. But do it away from me." Nicholas felt the ground crumble beneath him. He wanted to insist, to beg, but the determined look in Alice's eyes stopped him. He had broken something inside her, something he might never be able to fix. He stood up slowly, feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders. "I'm not giving up on us." Alice turned her gaze away. "Good luck with that." Nicholas swallowed hard, fighting back tears. Without saying another word, he walked out of the room, and for the first time in his life, he felt completely empty. It was drizzling that morning when Alice left the hospital. Yulia held her hand tightly, her eyes full of worry. Nicholas had insisted that they return to the mansion, that she accept his help, but Alice had been firm. She didn't want anything more from him. She just wanted to start her life over, far from lies. The small, humble house where Alice and Yulia had lived for years seemed even smaller after everything she had experienced at Nicholas's mansion. But it was the only place where she didn't feel deceived. She looked around, taking a deep breath. She was back at square one. "We'll be okay, Julia," she murmured, forcing a smile. Her sister nodded, though her eyes said otherwise. Alice knew it wouldn't be easy. She knew her pregnancy would demand even more from her. But she would rather fight alone than accept help from a man who had broken her heart. 2 days later, Alice was returning from the market when she saw Nicholas's car parked in front of her house. Her heart pounded, but she forced herself to stay calm. Nicholas stepped out of the car as soon as he saw her. He looked exhausted, worn down. "Alice, can we talk?" "We've talked enough." She tried to walk past him, but Nicholas blocked the entrance. "I know you're trying to push me away, but I won't let you go through this alone." Alice stared at him. "I don't need your pity." "It's not pity. Then what is it? Guilt?" Nicholas closed his eyes for a moment. "I just want to help you." Alice crossed her arms. "The only help I need is for you to leave me alone." The silence between them was heavy. "Alice." "Go away, Nicholas." For a brief moment his eyes flickered with emotion, but seeing that she wouldn't change her mind, he took a deep breath and nodded. "I'll come back tomorrow." She felt a lump form in her throat. "You don't have to come back?" "Ever." Nicholas hesitated. Then, without another word, he got into his car and drove away. Alice watched the red taillights disappear into the dark street, and as soon as he was out of sight, the tears she had been holding back finally fell. Nicholas couldn't sleep. Since Alice left, he had been trying to convince her that he was willing to change, that he would stand by her side, but she rejected him every time. And now, here he was, sitting in his car, watching a scene that made his blood boil. Alice was standing at the traffic light. Even pregnant, even fragile, she was still selling candy as if nothing had changed. The cold wind tousled her hair, and her determined expression tore him apart inside. She should be resting. She should be taking care of their baby. But Alice refused to accept his help. A wave of frustration and anger surged inside him. She couldn't keep doing this. Without thinking twice, he got out of the car. Alice turned when she heard Nicholas's firm steps approaching. Her heart skipped a beat, but she kept her expression steady. "What are you doing here?" she asked, trying to keep her voice cold. Nicholas stared at her, his gaze intense. Alice crossed her arms. "I'm working. Or did you think I'd just sit around and wait for you to fix my life?" Nicholas felt his frustration grow. "You're pregnant. How can you stand here all day, exhausting yourself like this?" Alice lifted her chin. "Because it's what I've always done." "And how long do you plan to keep pushing yourself like this? Until you collapse in the middle of the street?" "If that's what it takes, yes." Her response hit Nicholas like a punch. "Alice, for God's sake, stop this." "No," he ran a hand through his hair, exasperated. "You just want to punish me, don't you? You want to make me feel guilty." "This has nothing to do with you, Nicholas. I need to work." "No, you just want to prove that you don't need me." Alice went silent for a moment. "Maybe I do." Nicholas closed his eyes, feeling his heart clench. "Please, Alice." She looked away. "Go home, Nicholas." He stood there, staring at her small, fragile body, at the way she unconsciously held her belly, as if protecting their baby from its own father. And it broke him. He turned, walking slowly back to his car. But before he could get in, a sharp sound rang out behind him. The world seemed to freeze. Alice had collapsed to the ground. Nicholas sprinted toward her, panic overtaking his entire body. "Alice!" She was unconscious, her breathing shallow, her lips pale. Fear gripped him like a vice. "No, please, Alice, wake up!" He scooped her up in his arms, his heart racing wildly. He couldn't lose Alice. He couldn't lose their child. Without hesitation, he ran to the car and sped toward the hospital. At the hospital, Nicholas paced back and forth, his chest heavy, his mind consumed with thoughts of Alice and the baby. Then the doctor appeared. He rushed forward. "How is she?" The doctor took a deep breath before answering. "Alice is stable, but the baby is at risk." Nicholas's world stopped. "What?" "The physical strain she put on herself has put the pregnancy in danger. If she keeps pushing herself like this, she could lose the baby." Nicholas felt a lump in his throat. Their child. The thought of losing that innocent life growing inside her terrified him. He closed his eyes, trying to contain the pain. "What can I do?" "She needs complete rest, and most of all, she needs peace of mind." Nicholas nodded, even as desperation consumed him. He would do anything to protect them. Nicholas entered the hospital room slowly. Alice was awake, but she didn't look at him. He stepped closer, feeling his chest tighten. "Alice?" She didn't respond. Nicholas took a deep breath. "The baby is in danger." Alice's eyes welled up with unshed tears. "I know." Her voice was weak, heavy with guilt and exhaustion. Nicholas gently took her hand in his. "I won't let anything happen to you, or to our child." Alice blinked a few times but remained silent. Nicholas held her hand tightly. "Let me take care of you." Alice closed her eyes. "I don't know if I can trust you again, Nicholas." His heart ached. "I won't give up proving that you can." She sighed, but didn't pull her hand away. And for Nicholas, that was already a start. Alice gazed out the hospital room window, lost in thought. She had never wanted to depend on Nicholas, never wanted to need him. But now, with the baby at risk, she couldn't act solely based on her wounded heart. She had to think about the child she was carrying. "You need care, Alice," the doctor insisted, "and complete rest." Alice sighed. Before she could respond, Nicholas entered the room. Her body tensed immediately. "You're coming with me." Alice frowned. "What?" "You and Julia will live at my house until the end of the pregnancy." She crossed her arms, ready to refuse, but Nicholas continued. "This isn't a request, Alice. You can't keep exhausting yourself like this. It's not about us anymore. It's about our child." Alice closed her eyes for a moment. She hated to admit it, but he was right. Finally, she sighed and murmured, "I'll stay." Nicholas felt relief wash over him. But then Alice raised her gaze and said firmly, "But with some conditions." The mansion looked different when Alice returned. She entered slowly, holding Julia's hand while Nicholas watched them. "I want to make one thing clear." Alice turned to him, her expression determined. Nicholas crossed his arms. "I'm listening." "I didn't come back for you. I'm here for my child." Nicholas nodded slowly. "I understand." "Second, don't treat me like your wife. This isn't a marriage." There was a flicker of something in his eyes that Alice couldn't decipher. "Understood." Alice took a deep breath before continuing. "And third, if at any point I feel this isn't working, I'm leaving." The silence between them was heavy. Finally, Nicholas spoke. "If those are your rules, I accept." Alice nodded. Even as her heart tightened, she didn't want to get hurt again, and she wouldn't trust him anytime soon. In the days that followed, Nicholas surprised Alice in ways she never imagined. He was present. He made sure her meals were organized, ensured Julia was comfortable, and even decorated a room to be the future nursery. Alice watched from a distance. The cold, arrogant man she had known didn't seem to be the same person who now made her tea on chilly nights. But that wasn't enough to make her forget everything he had done. One night, as she settled on the couch, Nicholas appeared with a blanket and draped it over her without a word. She looked at him, surprised. He gave a small smile and left the room. Alice glanced down at the blanket over her legs and sighed. Maybe Nicholas really was changing. But could she trust him again? Nicholas had never imagined his life would change so drastically. Before, his routine revolved around meetings, upscale parties, and million-dollar deals. Everything was predictable, controlled, and comfortable. But now, his home was full of life, and for the first time, he didn't want it any other way. Nicholas woke up earlier than usual. He went down to the kitchen and, to the surprise of the staff, started preparing breakfast. "Do you need help, sir?" asked the housekeeper. "No, I'll do it myself." She was surprised but nodded. Nicholas was changing, and he wanted Alice to notice. When Alice came down for breakfast, she found the table set, and Nicholas was serving Julia's juice. The girl smiled at him. "Did you do all this?" Nicholas shrugged. Thought it would be a good way to start the day. Alice looked at him cautiously, as if trying to decipher his intentions, but she said nothing. She sat down and started eating. Maybe, for the first time, she was willing to accept his small gestures. Nicholas never imagined he would become so attached to Julia. The little girl followed him around the house, chatted with him about random things, and asked questions he never thought he'd answer. "Nicholas, do you know how to draw?" she asked one day while playing in the living room. He laughed. "I'm terrible at it. Can we try?" Before he knew it, he was sitting on the floor with her, holding a colored pencil. Alice passed by the room and saw the scene. She paused for a moment, watching Nicholas interact with her sister. Her heart tightened. What was happening to him? Nicholas started noticing details he had ignored before. If Alice looked tired, he would bring her a pillow to support her back. If Julia seemed bored, he would find something fun to do with her. If Alice felt nauseous because of the pregnancy, he would research foods that might help. He did all of this without expecting recognition. He did it because he wanted to. And little by little, Alice started to notice. One night, Alice stepped out onto the balcony. She needed air. A few minutes later, Nicholas appeared beside her. "Is something wrong?" he asked. Alice hesitated. "I don't know what to think of you." Nicholas looked at her. "What do you mean?" "You've changed. You're different." Nicholas nodded. "I'm trying." Alice sighed. "But I'm afraid it won't last." Nicholas felt a tightness in his chest. He gently took her hand. "This time, it's real." Alice didn't pull her hand away. And for Nicholas, that was already a start. The past few days had been unlike anything Nicholas had ever experienced. Life with Alice and Julia no longer felt temporary. He had grown used to Julia's laughter echoing through the house, to Alice's once suspicious glances becoming softer, and to the growing feeling that there was something worth fighting for. But nothing could have prepared him for what was about to happen. Nicholas was in his office, trying to focus on a financial report, when he heard a scream from upstairs. His heart stopped for a second. He ran out, taking the stairs 2 at a time. When he burst into Alice's room, he found her bent over the bed, eyes shut tight, teeth clenched in pain. "Alice?" she gasped. I think it's happening." Nicholas felt a cold shiver down his spine. "The baby?" Alice nodded, gripping the mattress. Nicholas blinked, trying to process what was happening. Okay, I'll take you to the hospital. He rushed to grab the bag Alice had packed days before and helped her down the stairs. His heart pounded, and for the first time in a long time, he was truly terrified. Nicholas drove as fast as he could, holding Alice's hand the entire way. When they arrived at the hospital, a medical team immediately took her to the delivery room. Nicholas tried to follow, but a nurse stopped him. "Sir, you need to wait here. I'm not leaving her alone." The doctor glanced at Alice, who, despite the pain, nodded weakly. "He can stay," she murmured. Nicholas felt a lump in his throat. The team allowed him in. And there he was, holding Alice's hand, watching her fight through the pain, realizing just how strong she was. "I'm right here," he whispered. "You can do this." Alice squeezed his hand tightly, tears streaming down her face. "It hurts so much." Nicholas swallowed hard. "I know, but you are the strongest woman I have ever met." Alice didn't respond, but she gripped his hand even tighter. Minutes felt like hours. Nicholas had never felt so helpless, watching Alice struggle, hearing the doctors give instructions, the sound of the monitors filling the room. Then suddenly, a fragile cry echoed through the air. Alice collapsed, exhausted, while Nicholas felt something inside him shift forever. The baby was born. The doctor took the tiny newborn and, after the initial checks, placed him in Alice's arms. Nicholas stood there, unable to move, feeling a lump rise in his throat. He stepped closer, his breath shaky. Alice was crying softly as she held the baby against her chest. "It's a boy," the doctor smiled. Nicholas stared at the tiny, delicate face, the little eyes still shut, the flushed skin. And then something inside him changed. He understood. He understood why Alice was so strong. He understood why she had fought so fiercely. He understood that nothing in the world mattered more than this moment. Alice lifted her gaze to him. Nicholas took a deep breath, his voice unsteady. "Can I hold him?" Alice hesitated for a second, but then, carefully, placed the baby in his arms. And Nicholas felt something indescribable. The tiny life in his arms was his son. He held the baby gently, feeling his eyes sting with tears. "Hey there, little guy." The baby curled his tiny fingers, and Nicholas felt his chest tighten. He never imagined something like this would affect him. But here he was, completely changed, completely surrendered. He looked at Alice, still holding their baby. And for the first time she looked at him without anger, without pain. There was something different in her eyes. Something Nicholas thought he'd never see again. Hope. Later, Nicholas sat by Alice's bed, holding their son's tiny hand. Alice, exhausted, watched him. "I never thought I'd see you like this." Nicholas smiled, still looking at the baby. "Neither did I." Alice took a deep breath. "Nicholas?" He looked at her. She hesitated. "I don't know what the future holds for us." Nicholas nodded, understanding. "But," she continued, "I think you're becoming the man I wanted you to be." Nicholas's heart raced. He wasn't expecting immediate forgiveness. But this was already a start. He held her hand and whispered, "I'll never stop trying." Alice closed her eyes, and Nicholas knew that, at last, he had something truly worth fighting for. Nicholas had never felt so complete as he did now. The birth of his child had touched him in a way he never expected. That tiny little being in his arms had become the center of his world. But as much as he wanted to celebrate this new beginning, he knew there was still a barrier between him and Alice. She was more open, less hostile, but she hadn't said she forgave him. And Nicholas was willing to do anything to prove he deserved a second chance. That night, Nicholas stayed at the hospital. Alice was sleeping deeply, exhausted from the delivery, and the baby lay in the crib beside her. Nicholas sat in a chair, unable to take his eyes off his son. He had never imagined that something so small could hold such great meaning. When the baby began to stir and whimper, Nicholas got up quickly. It was his first time caring for a newborn. Heart pounding, he picked up the baby, feeling clumsy. "Hey, little guy, it's okay, Daddy's here." The word slipped out before he realized it. "Daddy." And in that moment, Nicholas knew there was nothing in the world he wanted more to be. The baby calmed down in his arms, and Nicholas stood there, gently rocking him. He had finally found something that truly mattered. 2 days later, Alice and the baby were discharged. Nicholas had organized everything to welcome them home. The nursery was ready, every detail planned for their comfort. Alice looked around, surprised by his dedication. Did you do all this by yourself? Nicholas nodded. I wanted everything to be perfect for you. She didn't respond, but he noticed a different sparkle in her eyes. It was a small step, and Nicholas knew he had many more to take before winning back her love. The first few days were chaotic. The baby cried in the middle of the night, Alice was exhausted, and Nicholas tried to help as best he could. Even without experience, he was determined to be involved in everything. You can get some sleep, he told Alice one night, taking the baby in his arms. Are you sure? Absolutely. I've got this. Alice hesitated, but for the first time, she trusted him enough to close her eyes and rest. And Nicholas realized that meant much more than words. Even though she saw Nicholas trying, Alice still carried a fear inside her. She watched him play with Julia, hold the baby carefully, prepare their meals. Everything seemed too good to be true. But what if it was temporary? What if, when he realized that being a father and a partner required more than those small gestures, he simply gave up? She didn't want to let herself believe and end up hurt again. But Nicholas was determined to prove he wasn't going anywhere. One night, Alice was sitting on the couch, rocking the baby in her arms when Nicholas walked into the room. He watched her for a moment before sitting down beside her. What are you thinking about? He asked softly. Alice looked at him. About us. Nicholas swallowed hard. And what did you decide? She sighed. You've changed, but I'm still afraid. Nicholas gently took her hand. Alice, I've never been so sure of anything in my life. I want you, our son, Julia. Her eyes filled with tears. And what if one day you get tired of this? Nicholas shook his head. That won't happen. Alice took a deep breath. I want to believe you, Nicholas. He squeezed her hand. Then let me prove it. She didn't answer. But for the first time, she didn't pull her hand away. In the days that followed, Nicholas continued showing through his actions that he was there to stay. He surprised Alice with little gestures, helped in every way he could, and most importantly, was present. And slowly, Alice began to let her guard down. One night, as they watched the baby sleep, Alice rested her head on his shoulder. Nicholas froze for a second, then wrapped his arm around her. Alice closed her eyes. Thank you for not giving up. Nicholas felt a lump in his throat. I would never give up on you, she sighed. Maybe I can try to trust you again. Nicholas closed his eyes, feeling for the first time that he was close to having a real family, and he knew he would do whatever it took not to lose it. Alice had never imagined that one day she would look at Nicholas without resentment. But there she was, in his arms, after tearing up the divorce papers. Her heart still carried scars, but for the first time, she felt like she could trust him again. Not because he said the right words, but because he had shown through his actions that he was willing to change. The sun had barely risen when Alice woke up and realized Nicholas was no longer in bed. She got up slowly, her heart still light from the decision she had made. When she went downstairs, she found him in the living room with Julia, holding the baby in his arms while chatting with her sister. So are you going to teach him how to play soccer? Julia asked excitedly. Nicholas smiled. Of course, as soon as he can walk. And will he like superhero movies? Only the classics. Julia laughed and then noticed Alice standing in the doorway. Good morning. Alice smiled at the scene. Good morning. Nicholas looked at her and knew everything had changed. This time she was really there with him, heart open. The days passed more peacefully than Alice could have imagined. She and Nicholas seemed to have found a comfortable rhythm, without rush, without pressure. That afternoon, they were in the garden, enjoying the fresh air while the baby slept in the stroller beside them. It feels like we've finally found peace, Nicholas said, looking at Alice. She nodded, gazing at their son. Yes, but it's been a long journey. Nicholas took her hand, intertwining their fingers. It was worth it. Alice looked at him, her heart racing. Yes, it was worth it. A few weeks later, Nicholas planned a surprise. He took Alice out for a special dinner, not extravagant, just intimate and meaningful. At the end of the evening, as they walked along the lake on the estate, he stopped and looked into her eyes. You know I'd do anything for you, right? Alice smiled. I know. Nicholas took a deep breath and then knelt down. Alice held her breath. He pulled a small box from his pocket and opened it, revealing a simple ring full of meaning. The first time we got married, it was for the wrong reasons. Alice felt tears sting her eyes. Now, I want to do it the right way. Alice, will you marry me? She let out a soft laugh, tears slipping down her cheeks. This time, there were no contracts, no bets, no hidden agendas. It was real. And she didn't want to run from it anymore. Yes, Nicholas, I do. He smiled, slipping the ring onto her finger before standing up and kissing her with all the love in his heart. Finally, they had found their true new beginning. And what do you think? Did Alice make the right decision by forgiving Nicholas and marrying him again? Share your thoughts in the comments. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to keep up with all our stories. And don't forget to check out more emotional stories by clicking here on the end screen.